Estás viendo Canal América, televisión dominicana para el mundo.
A Time for True Show is sponsored by the Office of Dr. Bernard Fialkoff, a periodontal, dental implant and laser specialist in New York City, for over 40 years. Dr. Fialkoff was honored by the International College of Dentists and Pierre Fauchard, and received the Presidential Lifetime Humanitarian Honor from the White House. Call us at 718-229-3838.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got, but the world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your fears.
Welcome to A Time for True Show. It's a pleasure to have you back with us again today. I'm your host, Dr. Bernard Fialkoff. And we have a very special program. Special because it fills a much needed void in our world, and something that the United Nations has made one of their goals, which are a goal of a well community. Because when we have a well community, the families are doing well. The economy does well. The security, the safety, the education, everything prospers, everything flourishes. And tonight we have a very special presentation because you'll be availed of something that's cutting edge. It's like when Columbus discovered the New World. When Magellan sailed, but he didn't fall off of the square. And we discovered something new, which now we take for granted, and years later we laugh at the ludicrous ideas that we held beliefs and held so strongly to. And next to me, I'm very lucky to have with me today, and I want to introduce him to you, is, a good friend of mine, Datu, Jerry, Perez, the Tagle, and he is an international entrepreneur, humanitarian, and jokingly I say just a good soul, a very good human being. And we're going to be introducing you something very important tonight. First, I want to greet Jerry and welcome Datu to our show.
Welcome, sir. I'm glad to be back. I'm excited.
It's great to have you.
Yes.
Wherever you go, you exude this beautiful, like, spring. It's like people go to the springs, the hot springs. But I don't need to. I just go next to Datu.
That's a nice image. I love it.
It comes right out. That's why I love having you on the show. And tonight we have something very special. And it's something that you actually thought of and implemented at a very high level. And engineer, if you get those pictures ready of the soldiers and the trauma recovery program, and if you can start while he's getting that ready, you can go ahead and begin and explain to the viewers about the program that you initiated.
Surely. It started with a particular need in the Philippines. The year was 2018. And unfortunately, at that time, there was a kinetic conflict. There was a war in one of the islands of the Philippines. 1,000 people died, 300,000 evacuated. And of course, here you have a photo of actual soldiers who fought in that war. And so what we realized is that when the soldiers came back, when the refugees left their homes, they were in a state of shock. They were, in a word, traumatized. So what do you do? And the traditional way of working with it was to drug them with antidepressants and so on. But I personally do not believe in that. I personally believe in a wellness program, just like what the United Nations is talking about, a well society. And I am an advocate, like with you, doctor, of a drug-free world where harmful drugs are not pushed into the population, or in this case, with soldiers. So I created what we called as a trauma recovery program. And so this program was utilized. It was not an experiment. We used existing therapies, programs, and approaches, and we've combined them together. And so the first photo that you saw, and so this was in 2018, we were sponsored by the Philippine Air Force, the Department of National Defense. We rode in that Department of National Defense airplane, and we have there the volunteers. We called ourselves the Trauma Recovery Volunteers, and you see there the organizations that helped make it happen, to sponsor it, to bring us to the war-torn area, actual war-torn area, doctor. And so we met with the refugees, students from the universities who had to escape from the war.
Real life.
Real life.
This is not philosophical ivory tower. This is application of a workable and scientific spiritual technology that gave results.
Exactly. Real bullets, not metaphorical.
Yeah. Well, what I love is, since I'm president of this Drug-Free World, the Americas chapter, is I always like to find something not drug, something that allows the person themselves to have their own control, their own integrity, and long term not to be, addicted or even dependent on some kind of medication. My father was a physician in Cuba, and he always told me, we, as a doctor, we want to help people, but not make them dependent on us. We want to make them, independent and be able to be well, as the UN really has stated with their own goals of well communities. So now, tell me, what is this? Because I know you said there were 3 steps to the program.
Right.
And so, engineer, if you could, can you go back to that previous slide, Buddha? We'll go back to, this one here. Now, what is this one here? Because I know you said 3 phases.
Yes. The first phase was to address the physical trauma.
Uh-huh.
And here you have Marines, actual Marines who fought in the war and came back to barracks. And here you have them. We taught them what's called as an assist.
Yes.
Of allowing the physical body to heal itself by putting communication within the body itself. Very simple yet very powerful techniques, and we taught them 5 of these techniques. And here you have the demonstration. So we showed it to them, and they actually did it with each other.
Okay, so this is actually the military themselves,
Yes.
twinning themselves up and doing it for each other.
Correct.
Very nice.
And so you have another photo after this.
So go on to the next slide. Good.
Okay. And no, maybe the previous one instead, engineer. The previous one.
Before
that.
this?
Yeah, there.
Okay.
So that's on stage. They're being taught on what to do. Then after it was demonstrated, they actually did it. And then maybe the photo before that, engineer. Okay, that was our arrival. So I think that gives you an idea. And I'll tell you a quick story.
Sure, go ahead.
We had some of the Marines had a frozen shoulder. They couldn't move their shoulder for whatever reason. Some of them had ankles that were inflamed because of the trauma that they had incurred, right?
Yes.
And so we did these techniques, and within 30 minutes, it's like, before he couldn't move the shoulder, it was totally frozen. Then after 30 minutes, okay, oh my God, there's a miracle. I can move my shoulder. What happened here? The other one could run already. and was limping before.
Beautiful.
Beautiful. It's very heartfelt, heartwarming to see how with simple techniques the soldiers experience like a miracle, and that's the beauty of this.
Well,
So-
that's to me, as you're presenting this, the beauty of this is with so many things happening in the world,
Yeah.
causing so many stresses and injuries, that this is so needed across the whole globe, really.
Absolutely. So that was the first part of the program. It was called an assist. So we taught them 5 assist techniques. They actually did it.
Uh-huh.
We taught them in one morning.
Okay.
Okay.
Good.
Then we gave them an assignment. After that morning, they said, do it tonight. Do the assist, teach your spouse, and do it with your spouse.
Okay.
And then the next morning, they reported, awesome. They felt so relaxed. They felt relieved and so on. But after the first morning, when we ended that program on assist, we started a new program on that same first day. And the program was to if the morning handled the physicality of trauma,
Yes. Okay.
the afternoon we then handled the trauma of stress, in the emotions, in the spirit,
That's right.
because there's so much happening with them. People beside them were being killed. Some of them got wounded.
Sure, that experience is horrific.
Unimaginable. If you've never been to one, I cannot imagine it.
No.
Right?
Exactly.
Some of them had wounds in their face and so on. Some of them were wounded from battle scarred, literally.
That's right.
So we taught them a technique of how to listen to each other and let go of the charge of the trauma,
The negative energies.
of the negative
This
energies.
charges, negative energies.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So if you show the
Okay.
photos,
Yeah. Let's go to those photos now,
Right.
engineer, and we'll go to those of the.
and then we
keep
basically
going. The next one. The next one.
We basically taught them how
And
to.
the next one. Oh, I
That
think it's
one.
here. There we go.
We taught them how to listen to the trauma that each one had. It's a very well defined procedure.
Yes.
And so one person is asking the question, the other person has his eyes closed, and would just talk.
And
That-
we're experiencing it to
Correct.
run these emotions so the negativity releases from it.
Correct, correct.
Very interesting.
And the
It's
other
kind
one,
of like, jokingly, but it's almost like finding your keys. You're getting so stressed because you can't find your keys. You have no more time left,
Right.
and then you find your keys.
so here they're listening to each other. So after one person goes through it for maybe 30 minutes to an hour, then they exchange roles.
Yeah.
Then the other one the one who was speaking previously will now listen to the other and ask preset questions. And it was amazing. But I'll tell you one aspect of this. We were expecting that the majority of what they would be letting go of
Yes.
would be the battle scars of what happened in the war. To our surprise, Dr. Ben, a good 50% talked about the stress and trauma, guess what? From their spouse.
Wow. Look at that.
I would not have imagined that. But so again, this is about not just war-torn individuals who came from battle scars, but it is actually handling the stress of everyday life. That's the beauty of it.
Well, again, it goes back to what we were talking about, is to make a well community, because when the structure of the society, which is the man and wife making a family,
Yes.
and the society proliferating and being sane and secure, so what more important factor is there than that couple, like you said, getting rid of those negativities?
Absolutely. So we did that. We showed them videos. There's a theory behind it. There's a procedure.
Yeah.
And so we helped supervise it so that make sure that they're following the instructions and the questions correctly.
Yeah.
And then we did that for the afternoon of day 1 and then the morning of day 2 and until after lunch of day 2. And then they wrote their success stories.
That must have been so amazing, right?
Totally. It's like you see right in your face transformation and relief.
Yeah, it's interesting because you know that I'm a 43-year implant surgeon, and so it's interesting because I've used a variety of this in my office, where when the patients come in, they're very stressed out, like you said, and I listen to them, and we get them relaxed so they get through the incident. And so when we do that, by the time they finish, and I've had this remark from their spouses, remark from the general dentist, what did you guys do over there? Because the person is a different person now. And it's very interesting because we used a little bit out of the office, and what you're talking about on a large scale, I think must have been just truly amazing. What did you feel like?
I felt like there is true hope of healing.
Yes.
That the human the humanity of people healing in a way themselves or with their community. What has been the scourge of humanity today when a person is stressed? What do? They give them some drugs, antidepressants, and so on. I believe that there is a more natural way, and this is one way. And I see that this is not just for soldiers, but it's for the general public, especially for athletes, Dr. Ben.
Right, sports figures.
Sports people,
Yeah.
people in football, they get injured, there's concussion.
Oh yeah.
Athletes like boxers, how many
Especially
times?
boxing. Oh my
How
Lord.
many times do they get
To the
punched
head.
in their head?
This way.
Yes, exactly. There's so much trauma, physicality of trauma, right there and then.
That never actually gets addressed. I've often wondered, because you see how Ali in his later years, with his Parkinson's and all the debility that he had, and many others, and what they've gone through, to have him availed of this ability to reverse that.
And of course, it's for the general public. It doesn't have to be that you were traumatized or had an injury in sports. It's the day-to-day stresses of life.
Well, life can be traumatic. I don't know about you. Life can be traumatic and can definitely be stressful. And in our modern world, we definitely need something to recover, to bring us back into what we call the moment, or to be back in the present moment, right?
So that's why we call it a trauma recovery
and wellness program, right?
And wellness program. It's for everyone, we feel. And I'm seeing and believe today that the world is ready for this. Because once the release of the physicality of pain, the release of the spirituality or emotionality of the trauma is let go, what happens? The person gets invigorated. The person gets energized and gets happier.
Absolutely. Well, you know what? Very interesting. Engineer, if you could, let's put up the image you have from the United States Surgeon General. And because he recently, as Datu was speaking, there we go, as Datu Perez de Tagle has been speaking, and he's been speaking about, releasing those negative energies, the importance of those individuals helping each other, a group, a community. Really, those soldiers are making a community. And very interesting, because the Surgeon General of the United States very recently came out with his advisory, and this advisory he called Our Epidemic of Loneliness and Isolation. And what does war do? But obviously we lose people, we get lonely, we get grief, there's isolation, you're not with your loved ones, you're on the battlefront. Sometimes this happens, like you said, jokingly, but in all honesty, in everyday life. Sometimes in our jobs, we have very little time to socialize. We feel alone. We feel stressed. Then we're on the highway and we're in traffic. By the time we get home, we're so tired. And so in that advisory, the Surgeon General actually made light of the fact that lack of social interaction lack of communication with others, and lack of community was causing physical ailments, cardiovascular, dementia, stroke, mortality increases so that the person's longevity was decreasing. And that he went on to say on top of that, that not just the individual, but the whole community was suffering, and that the ills that we're trying to fix, which are the violence, the murders, the homelessness, the drugs, and the Surgeon General said that now that we know that this interaction, which is what Datu Tagle has been speaking about with his trauma recovery program and wellness, that now the Surgeon General of the United States has shown that it's not a philosophy or it's not some idea. Actually, we're seeing the results in our communities in terms of their lack of wellness. And we can look at the violence, the murders, the drugs. Those are the diseases, the community diseases. We see them physically in the people. It's very interesting. What do you think about this comment from the Surgeon General, Doctor?
I think it's right on target, Dr. Ben. We somehow knew it from a common sense viewpoint that when a person is isolated, or if a person has no supportive community, or if the people around them are putting them down, suppressing them, or not acknowledging them, what happens is that the physical body, we get sick.
That's right.
And this is why this Surgeon General report is very insightful, and in a way connects why in the global trauma recovery and wellness program that we did in the Philippines, I mentioned there's a third aspect, right?
Yes, tell me.
First, we did the assist on the physicality of stress and trauma. Second,
That's right.
we did approach it with the emotionality, spirituality of stress and trauma. Then the third one, so we ended that after lunch of the second day. This was a 2-day program with the soldiers. We then introduced to them, how do you sustain an environment, just like what the Surgeon General is talking about? How do you create an environment of wellness?
That's right.
And so we then introduced this book, The Way to Happiness.
Okay.
Based on total common sense. It's a moral code totally based on moral sense, non-political, non-religious.
Very important. Yeah.
Very important, yet very practical. So it works on the personal self, the family, the organization that we belong to, and the greater community. So it gives a roadmap, in a way,
Yes.
of how a person, the soldiers in this case, could go back with their families and create a lovingness, a peacefulness, a happiness that is totally functional and supportive, and create that community of support and of love. At the end of the day, it is, I truly believe it is love that we put it together. So these 3 areas or 3 parts, separate parts put together, put together is what we call as the Global Trauma Recovery and Wellness Program. And I believe this is for everyone.
Absolutely.
This is for everyone. And we're ready to let the world know and spread the word that it's not expensive, it's natural, and it's very supportive. And at the end of the day, Dr. Ben, it works.
Well, you know what? I have to tell you, in my 43 years as a surgeon, many times things were touted, but then they didn't work out. So what you just said, that it actually is efficacious.
Yes.
And it actually produces a product like we saw there, and like the Surgeon General has found, which is very interesting, and it's more and more being found. And then we see how drugs are not the solution, that in the Journal of American Medical Association, drugs in pregnant women have been finding out to cause problems with their newborns. The marijuana in the pregnant women are causing our newborns to come out psychotic, neurotic. So obviously the drugs are not and never will be the solution. And so they're kind of like covering, a chemical covering over the problem. And it's interesting because the Surgeon General, I think, hit it on the mark when he said, he said, we have an opportunity, but more importantly, something he said I thought was very profound. We have an opportunity, but also an obligation.
An obligation.
And he said an obligation to make sure that we actually, in our communities, have the social interaction. So, it's very interesting. This trauma and recovery and wellness program, to me, I would love, because I run events at the United Nations, I would love to see this at the United Nations. What do you think of that idea?
I love it. Yes. I believe the world's ready.
Right?
And the United Nations would be an excellent platform to present to the world that here's a efficacious, meaning working, practical solution that everyone can embrace, whatever background, ethnicity, education, gender, doesn't really matter. We are all human beings.
It's so true, and it's interesting because both Jerry and I were with Dr. Hong Taozi, who's a founder of Foundation of World Love and Peace, and he has traveled the world bringing consciousness and the importance of consciousness to the world. And then also recently from Turkey, President Ali Gedikoglu of the Council of Justice and again Peace, where he also has for many years been working on the importance of justice, treating people properly, like you said, the peace. So you know what? I think at this point, the world is ready for this.
Yes.
And the applications I think are so varied throughout the world, right?
Absolutely. So it's just a question now, Dr. Ben, of getting the word out, educating people, and giving them options that are inexpensive or practically free that works. And so we call on the global leaders, not just in the medical field, but the influencers of the world, the
political leaders,
the political leaders,
the presidents,
the celebrities,
very important celebrities,
the artists. We need to bring this out and really educate. And I think we're in a turning point. This year, with so much of the wars, so much of the conflicts occurring, I think we have an optimistic sense of hope of a turnaround, of a solution.
A window of opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. When you look at some of the fears that we have, now it's even no longer just a nuclear war, which God forbid ever would occur ever, but even on a small scale. But then this new electromagnetic, supposedly warhead, and when you hear of all these things, you say, it's time that we see the importance of human life, and this program that we're talking about with trauma recovery, it's time that the world gets a chance, in general, to recover from the trauma. If you look at the Crusades,
right,
the world wars that we've faced, the bigotry that the world has faced, right?
Right.
There's so many factors, right? And that it's time that the world gets a chance to recover.
Absolutely. And I am truly inspired that there is a solution that works for everyone. We just need to educate. We just need to let the people know and teach them simple techniques.
I wholeheartedly agree. And for those of you watching, and Buddha, let's go on a broad scale. You read my mind. And with both of us here, we welcome all of you. This is the world's trauma recovery and wellness program. The United Nations already has, as one of the goals, well communities, economic prosperity, education, the future of our blue planet. Datu, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show.
I love it. Thank you for this opportunity. I love it.
Thank you for being here. For all those of you watching, stay tuned. And in the meantime, if you want to reach us, you can email a timefortruthshow@gmail.com, and the both of us will be happy to communicate with you, move forward, and make this a well and prosperous world. Have a very good night.
Thank you.
This show was sponsored by A Time for Truth Foundation Incorporated as a community service.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got, but the world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your feet